the line was so strange the way it was, the county line, to separate the two
Because
counties.
people didn't know where the line was.
Didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
Couldn't really distinguish about that.
And they still don't.
And because I feel like it was an African American community, no big focus was provided by either county to provide the services that was needed at that time, because they knew it was all Hardscuffle Road. So you're gonna give half of Hardscuffle one service and keep the other one, and you know the people just
they
wouldn't
just
have
didn't
did
give any
that.
service.
Didn't give
That
any.
was an excuse for not doing either
That's
one.
right.
It was just a hard scuffle. The road was kind of uphill, and there was a lot of flat rock, I guess you call it bedrock, that was there. And you put gravel on top of a slick rock, and you try to walk on the gravel, and you're going to slip going uphill. So it was just a hard scuffle, and that's how it got the name.
First time Hardscuffle Road was paved, it was in the 50s.
We had running water, but the water was always scarce in Brentwood. We had a cistern, and our cistern developed a leak. It could be full, and the next thing you know, it would be practically gone. So we had to haul water, and that helped Brentwood back, lack of water.
I also remember as a child that I used to babysit in order to earn money while I was going through college, and the people that I would babysit for, particularly if we'd had a storm or rain during the season, would let me out, and I would hop out of this car as a young girl and run up, because they said, "Ann, we just can't go up this. That's just how bad the condition of the road was."
See, where we lived, well, we had a spring in a well, and mostly everybody got it. In the summertime, you used the well, because I don't never want to have to draw no more water.
Some of the old timers said that when they dug the cut, it changed the water level, and we couldn't get wells dug easily.
We had been trying for years. Too much rock, too much this, and you would have to go through all this to get the water.
A lot of people would go to that spring and with a barrel on top of a wagon, and they'd fill up a barrel of water, and they would take it.
And I just suggested, wrote letters to our congressmen, and even sent one to the president at that time.
So she suggested us writing the letters. She wrote the letters and everything, and so I guess in about 6 months to a year we had water down Hardscuffle. So she can tell you a little more about it. So she's the one we always thank for.
The first infringement, I say, of commercialism that moved up on Hardscuffle, they had a big cement plant, and he required a tremendous amount of water in order to function and carry on his business in processing the cement. So we decided if he can have water to run his business, then the residents who lived on that street should have been, entitled to it too.
And until Glenn Noble and Eddie Arnold and several others did the water district, and that was in the 1950s. That's when Brentwood started to grow, but the water was short.
One of the reasons that my father moved to Hardscuffle Road, that it had privy to the school there in Brentwood, that we were in walking distance to the school. And of course it was a 2-room school, and of course grades 1 through 8 as I can remember.
I went to Granbury Elementary, and I think that's when I really learned the difference with segregation and immigration, because we lived around the corner of Clover Lane Drive from the Bell family. He was a dentist, but he had daughter Linda Bell, and she's a white girl. Of course, she and I were good friends. We rode horses together, and I never just knew there was a difference until we went to start going to the integrated schools, and the teachers made the difference. Even though Linda and I were good friends, and she'd make Linda cry because you can't sit there, you have to sit here, and And of course, Linda didn't understand, and I didn't understand, and they said, okay, we have to have one black cheerleader. That's all we're gonna have. We're gonna have one. And so all of the kids in my community, we all decided, if you get it, I won't be mad. And if you get it, I won't be mad. And well, I got it. I was the first black cheerleader at McMurray Junior High School, and all of my whole neighborhood disliked me for the whole year.
And I think it's unique, and I think it also adds to the type of people that live in the Brentwood community. Now, I know that sometimes you may have been a 2 or 3 cent or nickel short, of your bus fare. I never was turned down because I didn't have that extra cent. So, and I remember this as a child, and I'll always cherish this. That's why I know it's so important when you're working with the public and that type of thing. I do know that there was a lot of times that I would be a minute or 2 late just trying to get to the stop. The bus driver would expect me to be there, and they would look and see me coming up the hill, and they would wait and come on, here he comes.
Thing that remains in my mind even today as an adult is that the churches in that community was a central focus, and the spirit that the people who lived in that community on Hardscuffle Road worked together, cooperated together. Every family there was connected to these 3 churches in a special kind of way. The unity of spirit, the unity of resources, and the leadership, the spiritual leaders in this church really was a great force as the churches being central focuses that addressed the youth. At that time, I was one of the youth that provided camp and Sunday school and operettas and plays. A lot of us got our ability to learn to become public speakers. That kind of teaching went in.
We have been just one big happy family throughout the churches and things. And so we still fellowship with each other. The Mount Lebanon Baptist Church, it was organized under the leadership of Reverend Larry Thompson under a maple tree on Hardscuffle Road in 1863. And the Board of Education consulted the deacons and pastors and advised them to buy it since it was in a Negro community. And so the building was purchased for $150, and from the Wilson County Board of Directors. So, and now the church is still standing there, but it's used as a art theater, yeah.
And it seems to me that religion was such a powerful force, and as a young person and even as an adult growing up, everybody in surrounding neighborhoods knew exactly when those annual days would be, and they would come out in droves to share, to fellowship, to see each other. Maybe you only saw them once a year on the Primitive Baptist's annual day, or some of the other churches that were involved, but it was a fellowship time. It was like a reunion time of old friends. We normally would have food there along with services that lasted all day long. And no one complained about us spending the entire days there. The churches also provided things that engaged and involved and kind of refined the talents of the children who grew up there with plays, and they'd have fish fries and hot dogs, and just they were very creative in their efforts to provide entertainment and fun activities for the young people who grew up there.
Being that my father was a minister, it didn't really make much difference because we were still everything centered around the church. You went to the church for summer activities. We had winter activities, weekly activities. Everything was at the church. You learn how to do crafts. You learn how to sew. You learn how to. It was just more than learning the Bible. You learn everyday things at the church. You went to the church for everything you learned at the church, and so our life kind of focused around that. The fact that we could go to the church for so many different occasions other than just worship.
It was changed from Hardscuffle to Church Street East back in 1972. And at that time, I drove a Metro school bus. And when my bus would break down, Hardscuffle Road was in between Church Street West and Cloverland Circle. So I went to Connie Patterson, which was the mayor at that time, councilman at that time, excuse me. And I asked him, I said, Connie, can't nobody find where my bus is? I said, since Maryland Way all the way up to Franklin Road, I believe, or Wilson Pike used to be called Church Street West. Okay, then from then on, from Franklin Road, I believe, down to Wilson Pike was Church Street East, right? And so then I asked them, I said, well, why can't we change the rest of the road from Hardscuffle to Church Street East? And he said, you go around and get the petitions of all your neighbors that live in the neighborhood, and I will do that. So then what we did, I went and asked Miss George Alexander to come kind of go with me because she lived in the neighborhood much longer than I did. So she went with me and we got all the petitions. And I took them back to Connie Patterson. And in a few weeks, the name was changed from Hardscuffle Road to Church Street East. And to this day, it remains Church Street East.
And it was a rock road, a big chunk rock, stone, gravel road. Whenever we would have a big rain because of the lack of drainage and proper culverts. It would be rock, it would be washed totally out. I can remember as a young girl when people from the penitentiary would come up at certain intervals during the year, and I never will forget because they were wearing black and white, both Caucasian and black prisoners would come, and they would have the trucks and they would spread the stone. This happened shortly after a storm when the big chunks of gravel that was Hardscuffle Road would be washed out, and they'd come kind of spread it and fill the holes.
And it tells, and he says that back when he was a child, he's 75 now, that it was called the Hardscuffle Community, as if that's the community name that it was called. So
just like where I lived when you was on the front porch, you was in Wilson County. When you went in the house in the living room, you was in Davidson County.
yeah, several houses like that had bedrooms on one side and the other had
And
another.
then when they incorporated Brentwood, then they put us all in Wilson County. And they,
We used to call it at the top of the hill. That's where the line came across right there.
And that was unique to Hardscuffle Road because the county separated and the line, even though the lines divided Williamson and Davidson County, the community itself remained cohesive. Now, people in Davidson had to go to Providence and in high school to Haynes or Pearl or whatever. And we went to Franklin Training or Franklin High or whatever. The community was split in half, but it was still Hardscuffle Road, Brentwood resident. They have a marker placed at a very, I don't know if it's a conspicuous spot or not, and she has that there that gives a brief history that you will find. It's called the Hardscuffle Community, so I think maybe that's where when we initially decided that would be one of the ways to identify. But it is there, it's standing there, and in one sense, it's the only thing that's there to let anyone know who visits this area that there was indeed a community of African Americans who lived and worked and expanded and thrived in this particular area. So we are very proud of this marker that gives a good summary and synopsis that, you know, we didn't just fall off the face of the earth.
I want a general statement about the businesses in that area.
I would say most of them, I think the community, and we shared this in our last session, where they were close-knit. I think they wanted to have something wholesome for the people who lived there, because during our lifetime, segregation was still a big part of our lives, and even though we were allowed to work at some of the establishments that were owned by white owners, I think the focus of the people, the black people who had their businesses, was trying to provide wholesome entertainment for the young people as well as the adults who live and grew up in the community. And some of them built the businesses from scratch, like Mr. Watkins, as she alluded to, was a block in masonry, and they would help each other, and that was built from the ground up by him. And so was my father's place, the little snack, and the Merriman brothers that we were telling you that provided that. And that was geared mostly for young people in the community to try to not only for give them wholesome things to do, but it was also a good place for them to be entertained in a safe environment.
We'd walk from Harpeth Drive down Franklin Road to Church Street, down Church Street to Wilson Pike. When we got to Wilson Pike, it was Hardscuffle Road, and we would walk up Hardscuffle Road, and we'd talk to everybody along the way. I can't tell you how many of the houses I was in, but it was a lot. I was in because they would come out and see my mother, and they'd like to show some of the things. They would say, they called her Miss Edie. I don't know why, but that's the way it was. And they'd say, why don't you come in, I want to show you my wedding dress. I want to show the picture of my mother and daddy. And so we were in all those houses.
In the community area.
The store was the main and the only grocery store that most people visited in Brentwood. In '83, Edie and I started the Brentwood Reunion, which was to bring as many of the families from the Hardscuffle area together. And I didn't think that was anywhere being possible, so I credit Edie for really knowing more people than I did and helping get the word out, because most of it was just by word of mouth. We're going to have a reunion. We're going to get everybody that used to live in Brentwood together for a reunion. That first reunion turned out over 500 people or more. And so my main focus on the history of Brentwood was exactly how many families were actually from Brentwood. And we come up with about 26 families, I think it was, that's actually from Brentwood.
4 nightclubs in Brentwood, the Palms Club, the Stork Club, the Boulevard, they were all white, and the Tumble Down Shack. And they all had the same method of operations. They had dancing, they had illegal whiskey, they had gambling, and they had food. So they all had the same method of operations. The Tumble Down Shack, it actually leaned a little bit. It was a wood building, and it was a jumping place on Saturday night, but all of Brentwood was a jumping place on Saturday night. The Palms Club was the biggest one.
And we certainly thank you for the opportunity to share and to give you input about our community as young children and well into our adult life. We thank you because African Americans were a very viable part of Brentwood, and a lot of very positive people and positive things happen. And I'm just happy that I had the opportunity to be a part of the community and as an adult to share about life in that community on Hardscuffle Road as an adult.